Washington's clear-thinking headquarters. The Morning Majority, 5 to 9 on 630 WMAL.
8:37 on WMAL. Brian Neiman, Cliff May, presidents of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in this morning. Thomas Joscelyn joins us now. He's a senior fellow and executive director of the Center for Law and Counterterrorism at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Okay, you guys need to, shorten the...
We got a lot of names here. He's my colleague at FDD. That's what you need to say.
Colleague at FDD. I needed the CIA to translate it all for me. Good morning, Thomas. How are you?
Good. How are you?
All right, so it's been a couple of days since we got the news, the great news that Bin Laden had been found and killed. What nuggets are you gathering in the days since this that really stick out in your mind?
Well, it's clear that the ultimate intelligence that really said about Bin Laden's demise came from the interrogations of detainees in U.S. custody. It's not clear, I would say, at this point, the exact details of how that intelligence was learned out or how the intelligence community pieced it together, but it's clear that it certainly came from the interrogations of detainees, including high-value detainees.
And that includes harsh interrogations that some would be calling torture right now.
Well, it gets complicated. It gets really complicated in all this because it's not clear exactly what the two main high-value detainees everybody's talking about are Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Abu Faraj al-Libi, who was KSM's replacement after KSM was captured. Both of them were certainly subjected to enhanced interrogation techniques. The question is, what did they give up about this courier, and when did they give it up? And I think the best reporting thus far, and none of it's conclusive, but the best reporting thus far is that KSM spoke about this main courier's nom de guerre or alias, and when Abu Faraj al-Libi subsequently was captured and asked about him, he basically denied knowing him vehemently and even made up a name for a phony name for him, which tipped off intelligence authorities that basically this guy was really important. I think that's where most of the reporting has come out right now, but I'd say that there's a lot of details still to be learned.
One thing that I think is sometimes misunderstood, Mark Tyson, I'll give him credit, has written about this, is it's not all a Gary Bauer scenario where you do the harsh interrogation and they give up the information right away. Rather, under harsh interrogation, they're asked questions that the interrogators know the answer to, and over time you're kind of you're softening them up and seeing if they will become cooperative, and then later you develop a relationship with them based on the cooperation and based on their not wanting to resume harsh interrogations. So that what Mark Tyson would say is somebody who has received waterboarding or harsh interrogations, that makes them cooperative, but not necessarily at the moment when the water is being poured into their nostrils.
Yeah, I think that's true with how the program was designed. The only caution I would even give there, too, is if you look at March 2003, for example, the month after KSM was captured. He was captured on March 1st. I've documented this before. You have high-level captures of al-Qaeda terrorists or identifications of al-Qaeda terrorists all throughout the month of March as KSM is being interrogated. On March, just a couple of days later, Majid Khan, one of KSM's main operatives who was going to be deployed to the U.S., was captured based on intelligence from KSM. KSM identified Adnan al-Shirkujuma, who is now a high-level al-Qaeda operative targeting America. He identified him as the guy that was basically going to be tasked with another operation in the U.S. He identified Afia Siddiqui, who was involved in the chemical weapons efforts for al-Qaeda, involved in plotting against the U.S. He identified Ayman Faris and Uzair Paracha, who were both arrested in the United States and sentenced to 20 to 30 years in prison. That all came in March of 2003. And so, in other words, KSM identified guys who were deployed under his command to attack the United States of America in March of 2003. So clearly even during the harshest time of his interrogations, because that's when the bulk of the waterboarding and harsh stuff occurred, they were getting intelligence that allowed them to identify terrorists, even subsequently get convictions against these terrorists in U.S. courts.
Well, it's also important. You brought up al-Libi. Al-Libi was never waterboarded, but he was taken to a CIA black site. But the thing that you mentioned about KSM finding him in 2003, we didn't get al-Libi until 2005. I mean, who knows? I mean, the waterboarding of KSM may have led to al-Libi as well, right?
Yeah, it could. Intelligence chains are tricky. This is why in the stylized political debate on all this, everybody's trying to, I think Cliff's caution here is exactly right. It's not like, these guys are waterboarded and then they just blurt out a name and that's everything. That's not how this works. This is all a game. And this was a game that the CIA, created in order to try and make these guys more compliant and find out what they know and to get them talking. I think a guy like KSM would have been particularly difficult to get talking otherwise, but, people have different opinions on all this stuff. But I think if you just look at the actual intelligence that came out of this, there's a whole chain. I mean, just recently even, there's a guy named Umar Patek who was captured after visiting Abbottabad, where Osama bin Laden was. his boss on Bali, who was the mastermind of the Bali bombings, he was captured in 2003 based on intelligence from KSM. So, there's a whole chain of stuff you look at here that really unravels the network, and that's how intelligence authorities did this. The particular nugget that ultimately led to Osama bin Laden's demise was actually a small nugget of thousands of nuggets, and it was really just that they focused in on it over time as they learned more through the years that allowed them to really isolate this nugget and say, wait a minute, that's really the gem in this pile of information.
What does it tell you about the Al-Qaeda network? I mean, obviously pretty smart if they're using these nicknames, these code names that perhaps even the guys like KSM didn't even know their true identity or who they were.
I mean, it's certainly possible. It's tough to say right now. I mean, the courier has been described as KSM's protege. If he was his protege, then it's difficult to believe that KSM didn't know who he really was, but it's certainly possible. I mean, the point you're raising is exactly right. I mean, if you look at the files that have been released from Gitmo, the leaked files, it's clear that, different high-level Al-Qaeda operatives, you're talking about top lieutenants to Osama bin Laden, didn't know the full details of what each of them were doing. I mean, Abdel al-Rahim al-Nashiri, who was the USS Cole bomber, who masterminded the operation, he didn't know a lot of what KSM was doing, and KSM didn't know a lot of what he was doing, and yet those are two of the top terrorists underneath Osama bin Laden after 9/11.
What would you say, Tom, about the role of warrantless phone tapping, which was also a big controversy at one point, and that seems to have played a role here as well, no?
Well, I'm sure a lot of these different efforts played a role because that's the way intelligence works, is you look for these multiple streams and they come together to form a composite picture. But you can tell from the quote-unquote warrantless wiretapping, that was an effort really seeking to identify terrorists abroad who were communicating with people inside the U.S., and that clearly played a role in isolating these guys. And I'll give you an example. The high-value detainees who have been captured, like KSM and Abu Faraj al-Libi, all these guys, there was vital human intelligence that led to their captures for sure. But one of the big things about them was they were communicating electronically, and the NSA does such a superior job of isolating these communications that helped us pinpoint their locations and helped us figure out where they were. That's why Osama bin Laden, based on all the press reports thus far, knew enough not to communicate electronically. He wasn't communicating through phones or anything that could be recorded or caught by the NSA, and that's why he was relying on human couriers. And it was only after we got all these high-value captures and figured out, hey, wait a minute, all these guys are communicating electronically and we have this great human intelligence on them, we said, why aren't we able to get Osama bin Laden? And it's because he was using his own tradecraft. He had done his own thing to try and avoid what happened to KSM and others.
Do you have any idea of the phone numbers that were in bin Laden's clothes, who they might be, or why we even know about that, too?
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that was captured with bin Laden is crucial. The one note of caution I would have here is when KSM was captured, I was reading some press reports last night, over 1,000 names were captured with KSM in the databases and his files. Over 1,000 names and files and bank records. We had no idea how to sift through all that and put that all together. The intelligence community had no idea what it was doing with all that. It was only because you interrogated KSM that he could put together the picture for you and tell you how all those files, what was really in those files. The problem here is I don't think that we have anybody alive that we can interrogate who would know what's in bin Laden's files. So they're clearly going to get a lot of intelligence out of them, but how much and whether or not they're going to be able to piece together as much of the picture as they were with KSM is really debatable.
All right, Tom. It's good to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Thomas Joscelyn, FTD, here on WMAL.